B'chol ze yuvan ma shamru razal. With all of this, you can understand what our sages said. Hakora b'Torah, about someone who reads Torah. Da'afilu adam echad shekore shechina shore imo. That even if one person is reading, the divine presence rests with him. Uv'tfilah ba'inan asara dafka. And with prayer, we need 10 specifically. Mishum datfilah hu ba achrei b'chinas hahala. Because prayer comes after the elevation. She'ein eda pechusam yud mitam hanal. And because we're on the level of an eda, of a congregation where all the 10 are included as one, and you have to have 10, therefore prayer needs 10, like we explained with the idea of eda hamatzeva, the aliyas hamalchus, the feminine concept of congregation. But with Torah, that its root is in the light of Abba, that's above division. Hadas, of Das, with 5 kindnesses and 5 strictnesses, like we said, Al Kain Dai, Gam Be'echad. Therefore, it's enough to have one, that's sitting and learning, that the Torah comes from the supernal wisdom, Kiyaду, as is known. And therefore, even one who is sitting and studying Shechina Shore Imo, the divine presence is resting with him miyad, immediately. B'tfilah ba'inan eda. With prayer, you need the concept of eda, the division from das, and the elevation of malchus, she'enam chusam yud chulu v'dal, that's not less than 10, like we said. And that's enough to understand. And with this, you can also understand this, that Yisrael says, "Then you are my witnesses." Eid Yud, which is aid with a Yud, u'b'matzeva nemar eda aid hey. And by matzeva it says eda hamatzeva with a hey, aid hey. So what's the difference between the Yud and the hey of edai and eda? Because when the speech goes up into Chachma, the Malchus goes up to Chachma, that's called Edai, Ed Yud, because it went up to Chachma, Yud. Like on the day of Shabbos or in Torah, that's when Yisrael is called my witnesses. And I guess that's the Hamshacha from Chachma, the Yud. But when we are elevating feminine waters from below, so like in prayer and the like, it's called a congregation with a hey. As like we explained above with the concept of outside the curtain. Which is an elevation from below to above, Dafka specifically, then it's called a testimony with a hey, because of the division of the 5 strictnesses and 5 kindnesses, and that's enough to understand. Now we can come to the general intention of this Maamar of Vayakil Moshe, is called Adas B'nai Israel, that Moshe gathered all the congregation of the sons of Israel, that we should reach this higher level of Edai, my witnesses with the Yud, says Hashem, B'Yeshaya Mem Gimel Yud, V'chin Atem Edai Vani Kel. Another pasuk there in Yeshayahu, it says, you are my witnesses and I am your God. Sham pasuk Yud Beis V'chin B'Simin Mem Daled Ches. B'Medrash Rabbah Suf Parsha Vayikra Parsha, and it says on the Shulei Hagilai in Parsha Vav. Al pasuk V'hu Eid Ora Atahore Saladas, and Medrash Rabbah brings these 2 psukim that he was a witness, or he saw, and the verse that you were shown to know, the concept of das. And the intention is Ki Moshe Mamshi Chadas, that the concept of Eda and Das, that Moshe is the one who draws down the concept of Das B'Knesset Yisrael into the souls of Israel. Shulchan Nikra Raya Mehemna, that that's why he's called the trustworthy shepherd. Shemefarnes His Hayamuna, that he gives sustenance of belief. And of course, in the Maamar from the Rebbe Purim Katan. Last Maamar he handed out. And two, drawing down the concept of das. That should be a concept of that you should know today. Nasa eid mamosh, you become a witness truly. Al derech atemidai, like the concept of you are my witnesses. Ve'echu hamshachas hadas. And how is this drawing down of das? Yishlomar, we can say kamosh kos varan ban b'sefer hamitzvos. Hayiviu hara'a b'sefer hachinuch. The Ra'a brings the Ramban in Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvah Taf Lamed Al B'Pirush L'Dov Gabo, and explaining and to cleave to him. So what does it say there? L'mod Divrei Agada. You should learn the words of Agada, the allegories and the homiletics and stories. Shemitoch Kach Atam Makiras Misha Amar V'Haya Ha'olam. That through this you will recognize the one who said, and the world was. Ken Kaze B'Sifri. That's what it says in Sifri. So that's the cleave to Hashem. And that's the meaning of the verse. And this is why he's bringing down this Maramakum. Because it explains this, and then it says that this is the meaning of this verse, that he was a witness, or he saw, or he knew. Imlo Yagid, if he doesn't say, Klomar, Imlo Yilmo Divrei Agada, what does it mean if he doesn't say, Imlo Yagid? Yagid from the language of Agada. Imlo Yagid. If you don't learn the words of Agada, like it says, and my mouth will say your praises, but my mouth is also saying Agada, and that's your praise. That Agada is the praise of Hashem. Like our sages said about the man, that it's like the seed, it's Kazaragad hu shuhu divrei Agada. Kazaragad is from the language of Agada. That the man, that reading words of Agada is like eating the man, this divine sustenance that gives you knowledge. We can say that through this you come to the concept of Vayakel, which is the concept that his congregation, that the word Vayakel of a congregation is also from the language of Agada. That his igud is founded upon the earth. Founded upon the earth. Agada shaykh lebechinas ואגודתו chulu l'chein Vayakel Moshe Shlomo Gam kin al yedei divrei Agada. We can say that Moshe gathered is also through the words of Agada. Through this you have that his congregation and his Agada gives you knowledge of Hashem. That's the concept of Vayakel, of tefila. That's the concept of prayer. That testifies to the works of a creation. With the words of song. By the splitting of the sea, by the song of the sea. This is in prayer. And afterwards we talk about the angels, how they sanctify and proclaim Hashem King. Listen Israel, or gather Israel. And the first ayin of Shema is a big ayin, and the last dalet of the pasuk Shema is a big dalet, and that's Rosh Tevos Eid, a witness. So through prayer, you also get this concept of Eid. Like we said, Eidah HaMatziva. Therefore, our sages said, anyone who reads Kriya Shema without tefillin, it's as if they're testifying a false testimony, because it's a concept of Eid. And the reason is because you are my witnesses, because their source is in the mind of Das. So even though we said before that prayer is a concept of Edah with a hey, here he brings the pasuk Atamedai, that through Psuke de Zimra and Shiras Hayam and Pirachos Kriyashma and Kriyashma, we are the Atemidai. You are my witnesses from Das. Mash Enkin Nefesh Below Das Lo Tov, which is not the case of soul without Das. It's not good. Let's look what it says over there. And so after Vayakil, it talks about Shabbos. So through the Yakil, we can make Shabbos. Because Shabbos who novelos ha'olam haba, because Shabbos is what has fallen down from the world to come. So the novelos chachma shelamayla Torah, novelos bina shelamayla shchina, novelos ha'olam haba is Shabbos. Kisha ha'olam haba hu tainu ge'elion, that the world to come is this supernal pleasure she'in bo lo achilo v'lo shesiyah, that does not have eating or drinking. Ayin mizeh b'Torah or Pashas Yisro softi bar maskil inyan ha'avos hin ha'birakava b'peir zachar v'shamar b'dibur echad nemru. V'Shabbos nikra novlos mib'chinazu, and Shabbos is fallen down from this level. Vayin softi bar maskil vayin midei chodesh b'chodsho b'peir midei Shabbos b'Shabbat. Look over there. Not sure how it connects. Therefore, the souls of Israel, because we are Hashem's witnesses, we bring an extra light in the holiness of Shabbos. And after the mitzvah of Shabbos in Parshas Vayakil, it talks about the Mishkan, Hayirios v'ha'aron, the skins and the aron shem bechinas mitzvos v'Torah, which the skins correspond with the mitzvos makifim, and the aron is Torah. Because through being witnesses and gathering together and then drawing down the concept of Shabbos, we're able to draw down the light in Torah mitzvos, like it says, we established edus in Yaakov, testimonies in Yaakov, which also means the mitzvahs. So the das and the edah is also meaning now you can have the mitzvahs. And Torah is placed in Israel. Edus rak ha'ara. And there's one explanation that edus is only a glimmer. Torah zehu atzmius. And Torah placed in Israel, that's the essence. Like it says in the Maamar about that Moshe commanded us Torah. So when we're talking about the Hamshacha from Moshe, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, is that Moshe doesn't just give a ha'ara of edus, of das, but also of Torah, which is the pnimius. And we explained before the explanation, the meaning. Torah nikra edus, that Torah is called edus ki novlos chachma shelamayla Torah, because that which is fallen down from chachma above is Torah. So maybe there's two levels in the Torah here. There's a level of edus and there's the pnimius, that which is fallen down, and that which is not fallen down yet. The makor, perhaps that's what he was referring to, in the Torah is higher than edus. Omnam neshamas Yisrael ayidei tefila, ayidei Shabbos mamshichim tosefes or behat Torah. However, neshamas Yisrael, through their prayer and through Shabbos, we draw down an extra light into Torah. Ad shenikra Torah, to the point where it's called Torah. Yeah, so that's how it is. That novlos chachma shelamayla is Torah. But through the prayer in Shabbos, we draw down to the point where it's not just called an edus, but it's called Torah. Like it says, to make the words of Torah, that we are drawing down the hamshacha to make it into the concept of Torah. B'dibur hamaskil, there in Shemaim Kisi it talks about Hadarat Dom Raglai, that Shemaim Kisi is the concept of Torah and the Dom Raglai is the concept of mitzvahs or whatever. B'dibur hamaskil v'chol b'nayich lemudi avai binyan al shelo baruchu b'Torah. Look what it says about the idea that until you bless in Torah, that you draw hamshacha into Torah from above Torah, which is this idea of through davening, you draw down, in Shabbos you draw down into the Torah. It says, where it says that Shmini Atzeres means a gathering Perush Simchas Torah, which is the joy of Torah, being Mesameach, the Torah, so to speak. Torah Atzma Hismecha, that the Torah itself rejoices, Al Yidei Slabshus Ein Sof Baruch Hu, to the enclothement of the infinite light may be blessed. That it comes into Torah as well. Shacha Pnimis into Torah, Al Derech Ute Orka Salmuchul, which like that he is garbed himself with light, that then the Torah is itself a garment through for the light that comes into it. It says in the Maamar of Hazinu that anything is called in my name and for my honor I created it. That anything called in my name, that refers to the souls of Israel. That through the desire of the heart we draw down an extra light, mislabish ba'Torah, hanikra kavod, and is enclosed in the Torah that's called kavod. So that's called hanikra bishmi v'lichvodi. That anything called in my name, that's the souls of Israel, v'lichvodi, meaning that we bring it down into the kavod, which is the Torah. That's why it says, for my kavod I created it. Because it gives something to the kavod, to the Torah, hamshacha into it. And similarly into the mitzvos. Look what it says about the concept of, therefore I'm giving you the Shabbos, with the concept of I have sanctified you with the mitzvos. That you have sanctified us with the mitzvos, meaning, I guess also that we bring something, a hamshacha, into the mitzvos, similar to how we bring it into Torah.